So a T is a T is a T, and thus the Japanese T must be identical to the English T, right? At least this is what we're typically taught in Japanese textbooks and Japanese classrooms, but this actually isn't true. There are two major differences between the Japanese T and the English T, one of which is aspiration, sort of the amount of air that we exhale when saying the T sounds, as well as the K and P sounds for that matter. Aspiration, however, is a little bit complicated, and I've talked about it in detail at length, so I'll just link that video down below. But the other thing is actually tongue placement. So in the English T, if you say the word Ted, the name Ted, for example, try saying that a few times. Ted, Ted, Ted. Noticing where the tip of your tongue is touching. Ted, Ted. So it's touching what's called the alveolar ridge, kind of that bump just behind our upper front teeth. Ted, Ted. Again, if you try and say it again, with that knowledge, you'll almost certainly notice that. In the Japanese T, the tip of the tongue comes in contact with the back of the upper front teeth, and then the blade of the tongue, so kind of the area just behind the tip of the tongue. If this is the tip of the tongue here, then the blade of the tongue is right here. Again, so kind of just right behind the tip of the tongue on the top, but the tip of the tongue is touching the back of the upper front teeth, and then the blade of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge. So in that sense, the Japanese T has just a slightly more forward tongue position than the English T. And if I say the word for generally in Japanese, which is spelled like this, you'll almost notice immediately, if you're looking for it, and this is funny that you can actually see the difference, that you can see more of my tongue as I say the te part of this word. So I'll say it a few times now. Ippanteki, 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 teki, teki. Now, I'm kind of exaggerating it a little bit for the effect, but again, if you look for this more forward tongue position in native speech, you'll start to notice it. I had a conversation with a Japanese friend during study abroad, and I was trying to say that word actually, which is why I'm using it as an example. And he was saying, your T sounds sound slightly off. And I said, my T sounds? And he said, yeah, like you're saying ippon teki, teki, ippon teki, but it's not ippon teki, it's ippon teki, teki. And I remember not being able to hear the difference, but when he said it, I was like, oh, his tongue is more forward in that second one. I'm seeing more of his tongue kind of in between the sides of his, on the sides of his upper front teeth. And again, this is because the tongue placement is different. So just to summarize things, in the Japanese T, the tip of the tongue is touching the back of the upper front teeth, and the blade of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge. This is different from the English T, in which only the tip of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge, at least in American English. I hope that this was useful. I teach Japanese pronunciation on Patreon, linked below if anyone's interested in that. Good luck with your Japanese studies, and talk to all you guys again soon. Sayonara.